Over.
Just another day in Melbourne. Just have these randoms in my house for a podcast.
All right, so welcome everyone, Warrior Strength Cast. I'm Shannon Green, and I'm here with my lovely co-host,
Lauren Green.
And we have on the podcast today,
Ben Cant.
Ben Cant, there you go.
How are you?
Good, mate.
Good.
Good. We're good. We're in Melbourne on holiday, so we're great.
It's not a holiday. Come on.
No, it's not. You're right. Thanks.
When the competition.
Kill my spirit, trying to have one positive thing. No, it is still sort of a holiday. It's nice to be outside of work.
Yeah.
Confines. So, yeah, no, it's good. And I've had some good weather. It's been nice.
Cool.
Can't complain.
So what is your job description, Benny? What do you do?
Oh, why would you ask me that? That is the worst question ever.
Stitch up.
Yeah,
He's like, I deal with mentally insane people.
Yeah, don't want to get...
I was prepared to get stitched up on the deadlift technique from this one. But,
I'm waiting to do that at the end.
Exactly.
Wait until you feel comfortable.
No, look, I do a couple of things. I work for a company called Result-Based Training in their education department. So working on that end, I run a coaching business and a consultative practice with my wife, Zoe. So I do a fair bit of that. Keeps me busy.
Cool. And you do a lot of nutrition stuff?
Yeah. Like probably 80% of what I do is nutrition coaching. Most of it's online, with various athletes and general population.
Cool. And what's your training background?
My training background? Well, look, I've just dabbled in everything over the years, really, until about 2014 when I decided I was going to do some bodybuilding competitions. Did that for 3 years until 2017, and then took a little bit of a break, which turned into an excessively long break to launch some businesses and a few injuries along the way, and one thing led to another, and we're basically here.
Well, how did you get injured? Shit, deadlift technique? No way.
No, I got injured twice with my dogs, actually. So
I
did a shoulder injury, which was not funny, but very painful, and then I broke my hand after the wedding, actually. So it was sort of a wedding and a honeymoon in between all that. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of years.
And you're also been helping Lauren out with her nutrition.
So you're my nutrition coach.
Yes.
Which has been good.
Yeah.
Good to hand the reins over to somebody that I'm not in a relationship with. Because I was basically doing my own and then doing it and sort of running things by you, whatever, and then when he would pull me up on things like, you're probably eating a little bit of shit or something or whatever. Not necessarily, but to a degree, if he wants to be healthy, he makes me feel guilty if I'm eating something that's off plan. And then we get to a Friday or whatever, he'll be like, we should have pizza tonight. I'm like, no, you told me, I shouldn't eat that yesterday. And he's like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine if I want to eat it now too. It's like, we'll go and have it. So anyway, I decided it was just easier to find someone smarter that
You need to delegate out this job.
Yes. So it's been good though, because I've learned a lot from you, which has been good.
Yeah, good.
I'm sort of the heaviest I've ever been in my life, but in good shape, not heavy and fat, which is an important thing for a girl. So at the moment, I'm actually trying to push my body weight up because I've got room to move up into the 75 kilo weight class. So I've been eating a lot, but I've been eating well, and my body weight is, if anything, just dropping down and a notch here and there. And I never thought I'd actually have trouble putting on weight, but I'm trying to put on good weight. Obviously not eating 12 pizzas.
Exactly.
So, but it's been good. My gut health has been good. I feel really good. This time last year I was cutting for Pro Raw to the 60 kilo class, and I think my body was just completely stressed out, and so I had a bit of a neck niggle that just wouldn't go away. And my chiro was like, it's just not going to go until your body's replenished, because you're in a constant state of stress.
Yeah.
So, and that just lasted for me about 8 months. And then so this year I feel like on top of the world in comparison. So it's good. I was having a chat with a mate, and he's like, you've never been this strong, have you? And I'm like, no. So it's good, feel healthy, feel strong, and I have both of you to thank for it. So As long as I do the right thing on Friday, we should all be celebrating. No pressure.
Absolutely.
So I came across you on Facebook originally. Benson Millgate was always posting stuff about his diet. I know he had Chris Aceto doing his diet, and then was usually just generally pretty bland sort of bodybuilding stuff. And I noticed his food was changing, and I noticed there's some sauerkraut in there, some like green olives and stuff. I'm like, it's like stuff I'd eat. I'm like, is he got John Meadows doing his diet or something? Like something's different, you know what I mean? And he's eating seafood. I'm like, his food variety's changed, something going on. And then he started tagging you, and I'm going, who's this bloke? And I look him up. It's like, seems pretty smart.
Yeah, well, you were actually saying to me.
And then I
"Go
started
follow,"
watching some stories, and then you were talking about the blue light blocking glasses. I'm like, this dude's onto it. He knows what's going on. I'm like, go follow this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he
yeah.
must have said probably for a couple of weeks, go follow someone like, you know, anyone. So I'm like, okay, I will. And then I'm just like either not on my phone then or whatever. And then eventually like you made me look something up that you'd posted. And within like 30 minutes, I was like scanned and stalked your page. And then I'd emailed you and I came out and went, oh, I checked out that guy. I've sent him an email to be my coach. Yeah, it's good.
Planted the seed.
Yeah.
No, look, I mean, that's what I've spent a bit of time in the last sort of 2 years with my Instagram and my socials. You know, I was doing a lot of gut stuff back in 2014, and then it's kind of just evolved into, you know, different things that I think are applicable for everyone who comes to see me. So, you know, one of the main things is just, you know, like looking at some of the diet plans that people get themselves onto, and, you know, they're not really hitting even minimum standards in terms of like general population with sedentary lives, let alone, you know, athletes.
Yeah.
So it's just about, you know, correcting that, and all of a sudden, you know, having them feel good, and just sort of looking at the diversity of what's required to do so. So, you know, trying to do it into an educational manner, and like creating a little tribe in the process, which is a bit of tongue-in-cheek stuff when I post a bit of stuff up, but like, you know, the little sardine crew running around, throwing sardines into their trolleys, like, you know, like 20 at a time. But yeah, like sometimes people do take it.
You to thank for the sardine sales in Australia going up.
Exactly. And, you know, the people take it like serious. Some of the blue light blockers, you know, people sort of get right into it, and I'm like, oh, cool. Like, it's not that I'm trying to say that's the only way to do anything, but like sometimes these little things are what people grab a hold of, and that starts there. That's planting the seed.
But they're fantastic. So I've got mine here. You guys didn't bring yours. Well, you left yours in the car. Yours are over there.
Yeah, mine over
so
there.
let's talk about the yellow ones on the camera. They're pretty sexy. The only thing I didn't do right was I probably should have got the goggle light ones, so that when I lay in bed I don't have to just put them up like that. But so what do these do, Ben?
Yeah, so look, I mean, I suppose it came, for me, I've always struggled with sleep. Okay, so I'm a very passionate sleep researcher, and it's one of the things I advocate with all my clients, because we're, you know, living in a world now where basically we're just eating away at what sleep we had, and we have this badge of honor of like, you know, I'll sleep when I'm dead and all these kind of things. And, you know, when you look at the research, it's one of the worst things you can do is sacrifice sleep. And so when we look at, you know, our modern environment where, you know, instead of our sort of circadian rhythm being, you know, set by the light, you know, so the sun and the darkness, you know, we're interfering with that, with all the artificial light. Okay, so artificial light after dark will kind of just trick the body a little bit, and, you know, sort of set in process a bunch of things that will affect your sleep quality or sleep duration, and you know, that kind of thing. So anything we can do to mitigate that or deal with it, or set up some behaviors where people are perhaps really going to bed earlier, you know, that's a win. So those blue blocking visors are just one method in which, if you really do have to stay up late under, you know, artificial light, whether it's, you know, LEDs or the, you know, the downlights, whatever it is, or looking at the computer, looking at the phone, at least you've got a method of basically, you know, minimizing that, and that can maximize, you know, your body's capacity to wind down for the day, you know, get your melatonin happening throughout the night. So we'll sometimes wear ours, like if we've got a couple of late night clients, like it's only up until say 8:30 we would work, but we'll have them on in the gym, and people come in like I didn't know.
Guys go windsurfing?
You go windsurfing, or at first they don't notice they're yellow, and they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know you wore glasses," like, and they probably think, "Great fashion sense." Like, and then so then we started.
The red ones, you look like Cyclops.
The red ones, So, but the red ones could go wrong in the gym. I feel something could go wrong. I'm like, no, put those plates on. What's going on with your technique? Sorry, wrong.
Definitely don't drive home with the red ones on. You're going to have a lot of trouble with the traffic lights.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, lucky I know what order they're in. So, but I just wanted to say, because I've always had sleep issues because I'm a really light sleeper, and so I've been sort of aware that I need to get on top of my sleep routine, things like that. Try to not be on my phone so much at night, all of that sort of stuff. Sometimes you're good at it, sometimes you're not so good at it. And then so when Shannon was like, "Oh, I'm going to order these glasses," I'm like, "Yeah, okay, sweet." So we were wearing the yellow ones, and then we watched TV in bed, which you probably say you shouldn't. So when I met him, I was like, no, I don't have a TV in my room. And then he's like, I can only fall asleep when the TV's on. And I'm like, well, you should stop that. Like, this is messing me up. But obviously he is bigger and he wins, apparently. So I just had to deal with getting used to it. So I have an eye mask, I wear earplugs, all this sort of stuff. And it was before he had a CPAP, so he snores. So that used to keep me awake as well. Anyway, he since has a CPAP. I still have my earplugs and eye masks. And then the first night that I wore these red ones in bed watching TV, and I lasted about 10 minutes, I was like, I'm going to sleep. So they work. They're great. They're fantastic.
They really do.
Extremely well.
Yeah. Look, when I give them to I was first giving those out to clients, I think back in like 2011 or 2012 or something like that.
Yeah.
And back then I was looking after, just a lot of like bankers and guys that were working in finance at the time. And I just remember these guys they were highly stressed, staying up late, getting like crushing work till late. And I wouldn't even really tell them what they would do. I would just like literally just give them to them and say, hey, just go away with this. And then I'd get like an email the next day or the day after that going, man, I cannot stay awake. And I'm like, well, that was the point. That was
You're like, you've ruined my career.
You're 4 hours of sleep. Yeah, exactly. Probably lost their jobs over decreased performance. But yeah, so, there's something that a lot of people find that like an instant result in terms of just the benefit with just winding down, just getting that sense of calmness, going to bed earlier.
Yeah. So my sleep routine's been great, and I'll boast and say that last week you told me out of all your clients my sleep is the best. Yeah. So I wear that badge of honour proudly.
It was very impressive.
And but I definitely noticed a difference. So not only, I guess, in comparison to last year, dieting and being hungry and having shit sleep and trying to maybe use sleeping tablets or something to get to sleep because you're hungry and your body's in a high state of stress. So this year I've had a great sleep routine, which all goes hand in hand with my recovery and staying lean and being healthy and being on top of my game.
Yeah, and look, my initial write-ups for every client are the same. It's all based on behaviours, you know what I mean? Which is not what everyone wants. Like my Instagram DMs are always full of like, what's the best supplements that I can take for sleep? What's the best supplements I can take for fat loss? All this kind of stuff, because it's just, what's the
quick fix?
Yeah, what's the quick fix? And I would say, like, you build, that progress, those results on these behaviours. And so, if someone can't minimise their use or, their environment with that exposure to artificial light, the things that they can do are, the blue blocker visors, the different apps that are available on the phones now to, change the wavelength of lights, the exposure that's coming from the screen. So there's a lot of things out there that you can do, and go from there. Like the white noise type situation with the TV, for instance, like we could look at, changing that behaviour to, different audio formats and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the other week he's like, we need to, I think we shouldn't have a TV in the room. And I'm like, fuck. 4 years later, like, okay, that's a great idea because it was yours.
I've been listening to the podcast to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So.
And if my eye mask comes off in the night, his scream wakes me up. I'm like, jab him in the ribs.
If Zoe ever needs to go to sleep, she just asks me a question about something, and then I start talking, and she just goes to sleep, and I'm like, hits me right.
That was like me when I was tired and I couldn't sleep. If I had a Dr. Rhonda Patrick thing on, I would end up like I'd watch it on YouTube, and then I'd always doze off because she gets so in depth with things. So that's just like you are the male Rhonda Patrick, aren't you?
Well, if you listen to Matthew Walker, while we sleep, he says in all of his podcasts and interviews, he's like, if you fall asleep listening to me, I won't be offended whatsoever.
I loved his podcast with Joe Rogan, and then I read his book while we were on our honeymoon, and it was great because I had his accent to read his whole book.
That's the best.
So it was good. It was
I always recommend that. I love sort of gifting books to clients and stuff like that. But before I do, I say, I just want to watch you, get you to watch them, give the presentation or a podcast or whatever it is, and just like literally have their voice reading that.
It was
book.
the best.
That's good.
Yeah, that's an interesting book too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people definitely underestimate how much sleep can do for their performance. It's a massive thing I see with people all the time. They're always asking, like you said, what supplement can I take? Or they're searching for the best program or coach hopping. And it's like, motherfucker, you sleep 5 hours a night. Like, what do you expect?
Yeah, exactly. And, I back in sort of 2013, 2014, this is when I was sort of getting known more on the socials for the gut side of things. And it took me about 12 months. I did a lot of testing in 12 months. Like I would have run over 50, clients testing, and the 95% that got results were the ones that would either slept well or fixed it.
Yeah.
And the 5% that really struggled were the ones that just would not change those behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's when I changed my tune. I was like, you know what? Like, this isn't as hard, and it doesn't need to be as complex as people want to make it out to be, or that people are interested when it comes to things like gut, for instance. Fix your fucking sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's as easy as that. That sets up a foundation for the way the body likes to heal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I always get my clients, whether I'm doing nutrition with them or just training, I get them to track their sleep, whether they use like one of these or whatever, and write down their hours of sleep and then their steps and everything like that. And then I can have a look at their program. Okay, where are they dying? So why didn't they hit this session? And then it's like, okay, you didn't have much sleep the few nights before, and had high activity, and you're underate, and then just basic metrics like that, and people just don't really pay attention to either.
Yeah, exactly. And from a trainer or coach's perspective, the statistics for the risk of injury from an underslept client is through the roof.
Yeah.
If you are trying to coach skill acquisition, and they're trying to get better at a particular lift, and they don't sleep like the night before or the night after, it doesn't entrain as well. So we literally don't learn, we don't remember, and their risk of injury is higher. Like, it just goes without saying that coaches should be making sure their clients are really well slept.
And maybe leading by example.
And as you know, like probably 50% of my clientele at any given time are coaches. And I'm that ruthless sleep warrior for them on their behalf, because they're, a lot of these guys are just, and guys and girls are giving themselves to their clients, and they're falling apart in the process. So they're getting great success, but they're not that authenticity of actually doing what they're telling other people to do.
Practice what they preach
isn't quite there. And so that's where I go in, and I've got their back until they've got their back. Well,
that was like when we met, and I was coaching, and I'd have clients from 5 a.m. and then I'd coach clients till 9 p.m, things like that. And then I was trying to get stronger. I was doing CrossFit at the time, but I was still trying to get stronger, trying to get better at all my training. And then you were like, well, what, like, you can't live like that. Like, and I'm like, well, I need the hours, I need the clients, like, blah, blah, blah. This is the only time people can train. And Shannon was like, no, it's not. He said, you need to decide what you want to do, which one. And then he said, and then if you tell your clients you can't train at that time anymore, this is what time I've got available. He said, if they want to stay with you, that they will. So, and then they did. So they adjusted, and then obviously, some clients come and go, which is the natural life cycle of a client anyway. But, I did that, and then it sort of ended up working out with everybody and the people that are still with me from doing that. And then now when I harp onto them about sleep, then they realize, like, I'm doing it as well. And it changed everything for me, because I was tired and grumpy, and then I'd come, like, maybe I'd have a good training session, maybe I wouldn't, but it was all out of my control, because it would depend. Like, I'd have to get up at 4 to go and, eat breakfast before I went and had 6 clients before 8 a.m. Because you're doing 30-minute sessions and stuff like that, and it was a nightmare.
And it's a very, very common scenario for, like, coaches, especially early on in their coaching career, is just to be at the beck and whim of, their client schedules. And
say yes to every single client, no matter what.
Exactly. And I think it's part of the important evolution of a coach is to sort of stand your ground and have that authenticity, and realize that people love that. And they're kind of like attracted to that within their coach. And so, if you do, gain the skill and the experience of, like, being in the trenches, and then have that evolution of yourself where you go, no, look, these are the times I'm going to be available. You bring out the best version of yourself, which brings out the best version of them.
Which is what's happened.
Exactly. So I think that's really important for a coach to get to that point.
100%. And then what about, like, setting your circadian rhythms? So do you recommend anything to people, essentially, like getting sunlight in the morning and anything like that? Or
I mean, the basic elements of it are to try and stick with the natural light cycle as much as possible. So in terms of, like, the cueing of that circadian rhythm, which is kind of the natural rhythms of the hormones within our body, light, dark is number one, followed sort of behind meal time. So if we can get our meals occurring at the regular times throughout each day, and training and social activities. So when people have schedules where they're all over the place, so they eat at 10, 12 to one day, and then like 9:30, 3:30, 5:30 the next day. That's not in training it from a meal point of view. And the same thing is when their training sessions are all over the place as well. So as much as possible, if you're trying to strengthen circadian rhythms, you really are trying to set up your day to look very similar and not totally destroy that on the weekend either.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's where a lot of people.
yeah, exactly. And the science is, even recent studies that have come out have sort of, highlighted that we can't just go in and sleep with a couple of extra hours on the weekend and
can't catch it up.
You can't really catch it up, okay, and get the benefits of getting adequate sleep every single night. So, I think that's just important thing is, as we grow older, and when I look back to what I did to my body throughout my early 20s and late 20s, I'm like, I wish I knew this back then.
Yeah.
So having the fortune to...
I don't really know how I'm alive.
I don't think any of us do. But, I coach some terrific, early 20s coaches who, they are so smart already because that access of information.
Yeah.
They're just changing their behaviours 10 years earlier than I think a lot of people our age. And I think, man, by the time these guys are 30, 35, they're going to be absolute superstars.
Yeah.
They've learned from all the mistakes that we've made and, got access to, all this research. So,
great information.
Yeah.
And then what about as far as do you recommend people go out in the sunlight in the morning and try and set themselves that way with a natural light? Or
that's one of the important things you can do is actually just try and get the sun on the skin, and I sort of say that with quotation marks a little bit because we obviously got the Cancer Council in Australia who's very strongly kind of advising to be very careful with the sun exposure to the skin, but as with everything, it's a balancing act and you should do it safely. And I have a lot of my clients use D-Minder, the app, which you can actually sort of look at where you are geographically and what the exposure
I used that
is
this
on
morning
that day.
on the roof terrace actually.
And you can really look at optimizing your vitamin D obviously with that app, but also just getting that sunlight and when you have that exposure to the eye and to the skin, that helps entrain the body as to the correct time of day, which strengthens all those circadian rhythms as well. So one of the things that I'll talk about with clients is perhaps not using sunglasses so often when they're outside. So maybe use them if you're driving into glare. Absolutely. But if you're just sort of walking around and trying to get some morning sun exposure to strengthen that circadian rhythm, do it without the sunglasses.
Because there's a hormone, is it melanopsin, the one that's in your eyes or whatever, that's triggered by the blue light in the actual sun. That starts it off in the morning. And
you have these receptors that basically the sunlight will hit them and then they'll sort of signal to part of the brain, the hypothalamus, and that'll just sort of set the tone of the hormones for the rest of the day and the night, and really gets set up from the morning. So when we talk having all this discussion on sleep, my sleep routine, when people want to know about it, it starts from the moment you wake up. Okay, and we really try to get you outside, get that exposure to sunlight, and then if we're trapped inside all day long, with no access to natural light, then we'll look at setting up a routine where perhaps we can get outside from work. And often it's a case of stacking these habits together. If someone's stressed out and they're working long hours, they don't have access to the sun, it's always the same type of people, right? So you're okay, cool, so you need to go outside, you need some sun exposure, you need to eat mindfully instead of mindlessly. So I'm all about just really trying to give them this thing where they go and do one thing, but they're hitting 5 or 6. And people like that, those A-type personalities who are looking for efficiency, they love that.
Kill 5 birds with one stone.
6. Exactly. So you sort of play to their desires a little bit as well. So
cool. And then what about at night time, obviously besides the blue blocking glasses and stuff like that, what do you recommend about people going to bedtimes and stuff like that, as far as you've got any recommendations for that?
So I think, look, the further you get away from the equator, the more this is potentially a topic that we could talk about. So, down here in Melbourne, we're a fair way down. And so we get a much shorter light cycle in winter down here. So, I encourage people to really sort of treat a winter down here as a shorter day. Okay. So try not to extend it. It's if you're going to be using a lot of artificial light to stay up late, whereas in summer, you've got that longer light cycle, that longer day, and you can stay up a little bit later, and you're doing so under, as the sun sets.
Natural conditions.
Exactly. So, when I coach my Gold Coast guys, for instance, it's a very different story. When you, as a coach, you have clients that close to the equator, they're always in the sun, they have a very different lifestyle to, say, Sydney and Melbourne people, generally speaking. So it's probably a topic that I'd have more with those, with people from down here. Cool. So just work with the light. Exactly.
Back to how we're designed.
So I'm
back to the caveman days.
Exactly.
But it's true, because I remember going camping when I was younger, and you would you would get up, obviously, because it's hot. The sun comes up early in the morning, and the tent gets hot. So you get up, and we'd just get up, go for a surf, and then that night we'd have a fire and we'd have some food. And when I was like, oh my god, I've got to go to bed, and I'm like, oh, it's not even 7 p.m.
100%.
You know,
yeah.
you're like,
and you can take people that swear they have sleeping problems and like put them through that scenario, and all of a sudden they are just getting knocked out. Having
that was me.
Ever.
I was like, I can't sleep, but I just had that lifestyle where I just was not sleeping.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that's important to recognise and like just be totally like brutally transparent with a person. You know, that's as when I'm doing consultation, one of the questions I'll always ask is, do we get resolution when you're on holidays?
Yeah.
You know, or whether it's a gut issue or whether it's a pain issue or a stress or whatever it is. And people will often tell you that when they don't have the modern stresses or they're away camping and stuff like that, everything resolves. And I'm like, well, your answer's there. We don't have to look into the biochemistry so much.
Yeah.
Forget that stuff. What we really need to do is like look at how can we reverse engineer your life to resemble more like your holiday. And people that need a holiday laugh at that because they're like, oh, that's so different.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, that doesn't mean you shouldn't like try. So I've coached people to the point where they're sending me pictures of the house they're going to buy to look at the actual the building biology of the house, like is this too close to power lines, is this like this kind of thing. And that's really great because someone's going to spend the next 25 years of their life there, put a major investment in, and like to literally have someone not actually buy where they were going to buy because they realized, oh, this is a really bad place for me. It's nice.
That's good.
And so you alluded to there, like power lines. Do you pay attention to like obviously EMF and stuff like that? So magnetic fields in people's houses, and what do you sort of recommend as far as that front's going? Yeah,
I mean that's a hard topic just given the like modern conveniences of everything, especially in a big city.
Yeah, everything's Bluetooth, everything's Wi-Fi, everything's electrical.
Yeah, well, since doing your questionnaire, we switched. All our Wi-Fi is on a timer, things like that, so it all comes off while we're sleeping.
Yeah.
But there's obviously some things that we can't control, and then in outside of our gym, like the neighbours next door where our dogs will just hang out on their grass, there's that big electric power
substation.
I think I'm going to drive the dogs down to the beach today. Like before, I was just kind of maybe just sitting on that wall having a coffee in the morning, watching the dogs, and then I was like, I'm just going to drive to the beach rather than get the sun on my eyes, But it changes your life anyway because it's a much better thing to do.
Exactly.
But I have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I think it's a big issue. I think it becomes quite a contentious topic, like a lot of things in health, because it really what you're broaching on is like people love the convenience of modern technology. Like where would we be without it? And so it's like this double-edged sword, and so a lot of people don't like to be confronted with it. And from the literature perspective, the experts are divided on this, which just creates this polarity of opinion. And people like being tribal people like to sit on one fence or the other rather than just taking this like midline approach and just going, hey, let's just be sensible about it. I'm massively into research. I do a lot of it pretty much 5 days a week. And I think there's enough there for me to be very like healthily concerned, I suppose, in terms of too much exposure to these things. Some of the potential effects have a very long time until they may become apparent. 20 to 25 years with certain issues.
Which is really, like, now you think about all the kids sitting around on tablets for hours on end.
Exactly. And so we just have not had exposure like this.
We don't know.
In this exponential manner that we do now for that period of time. And so there are some experts which are really concerned, saying that we could see, explosions in various health issues down the line that we just have not had time. So, some basic things, when I've given seminars on the topic before, I look, some of the things like the fridge that are on all the time and, do have a fair bit of electromagnetic and fields and stuff like that. They may be something you don't want to hang around all the time. So if your fridge was backing onto, your kid's bedroom and the cot was right behind the fridge, I probably would move the cot. The thing is, it comes down to the inverse square law. So distance is king, meaning that 2 meters away from that fridge right there, that exposure drops off a cliff. It drops off dramatically. So there's some basic stuff there you can do. It's like being on, you're in a main bedroom and there's a switchboard right near the bed. Perhaps there's, you can shift the bed a meter or two and that exposure has just dropped off dramatically.
Okay.
So these aren't necessarily huge interventions.
You don't need to knock your house down and
Look, I have told clients to move. I am that coach. I lived in a couple of high rises 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a very bad decision from my health. I would wake up every morning with just massive brain brain fog and just headaches, and as soon as I would get out of there, they would just resolve. So, it's this sensitivity that individuals may have to some of this as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. And do you get like a what do you call it? Like a EMF meter and go around clients' houses? And get that freaky and go, this is no good.
Yeah, look, I try not to make too many trips to clients' houses. I have before. But again,
that's like the what's the people that see dead people or whatever. They come over and go,
like
there's a
the
spirit in here.
And he's there with his lumens meter and his EMF meter going, it's too much light, there's too much EMF.
Look, it's one of those things where you really just have to pick your crowd. So, I'll have this discussion a lot with genetic reports at the moment, okay? Because every man and his dog is getting their genetic report done, and it's readily accessible but not easy to interpret. And a lot of these companies that are coming out with these recommendations are just really kind of scaring the consumer, because you can kind of cut out this middleman or the practitioner or specialist or doctor, whoever it is who could interpret it for you. And so same as going to someone's house, if they can't do anything about it and you're like, whoa, you have all this exposure, like you're probably just adding to it in a way. So I think it's just important to recognize when you have these discussions with people, you may have to deliver it in like bite-sized bits to not
This
freak
is
them
a
out.
skill you don't have, Shannon.
I love the hammer.
And it looks, so am I. Like, I joke about having the feather and the brick. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm the feather, and then some people you can be the brick.
Yeah.
You're like, man, this person will do whatever I want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know what's best for them, and you can just tell them straight up, and you can have that buy-in.
So what about these genetic reports? We've had our genetic ones done, and I've put it in Prometheus as well, but it's freaky how much shit shows up, but then you start reading it and you're like, well, I don't know, like how much is actually applicable?
So a lot of it is it can be like clinically significant. The issue I have is just that there are companies basically doing these reports based off the raw data and then just making blankets recommendations. Like, this is the diet you should eat.
Just exploiting people.
And this is the supplements you should have. And that's just not right. I've done posts on this before just to try and explain to people that you have to really take into considerations like your current dietary intake, for instance. Okay, your current environment and the health conditions that you're bringing to the table, your current nutrient status. Okay, so looking at what you have already inside you from a vitamin mineral perspective as well. So people like to super physiological dose on supplements, for instance, and I'm just like, you can really do yourself a disservice if you go blanket doing that based off a genetic report alone. And unfortunately, a lot of them do. So the data can be very useful, but I find you need to marry that up or integrate that with someone who can really build out. Like clinicians can build out a very good symptom picture by asking a myriad of questions. Different types of practitioners can do that. I'll do that to a degree, but I'll also work with doctors or specialists and my wife to run different lab reports as well, and actually get a look at what markers are there. So the common one that everyone knows about is MTHFR, and maybe they do have a snip on that, so a polymorphism, and then they're just dosing up on these huge doses of methylfolate, and I'm like, well, what's your homocysteine like now? What's your B12 like? What's your folate looking like coming in from your diet? Okay, so you don't necessarily want to be going gung-ho on a huge dose of that one nutrient, because you can cause massive issues. So
Cool. And then so along that lines of micronutrients, you bang on it about a lot, and I bang on it a lot to my clients about it, but it seems like, especially with the whole IIFYM revolution, this has sort of got pushed by the wayside, and people forget that there's actually minimum standards that you've got to meet, and they're based off general population, not really based off an athlete. And I don't see many people even getting anywhere near to meeting them and just worrying about just macros,
I've probably spent the last 18 months like really trying to bring that to light, and it's not that I don't, when someone asks me what my philosophy is on flexible dieting or IFYM, I go, look, I don't really have a philosophy on it as such, but like I have I think are valid concerns of, I see, and this is not just flexible dieting, but just generally speaking, you sit down with a client and you look at the nutrition plan and you're like, okay, so we're not getting 25% of what we would ask as a minimum of potassium. We're not getting like 25% of magnesium. We're getting like 10% of calcium, and all these issues. And I'm like, this is a person who's training 6 to 7 days a week. They're in a caloric deficit, so they're bringing to the table a case in which you really want to be looking after that micronutrition, yet they're the one that's being starved of it, because of this hyper focus on the macronutrition side of things. And most of the times it's because it's a fat loss goal, but in the process of that, you really start to run the gamut of nutritional deficiencies. And I'm like, so if you're a coach and you're out there writing nutrition programs and you're just saying things like no dairy, it's everywhere. It's like no dairy. That's fine. You can say no dairy, but you probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't be having your clients eat 70 milligrams of calcium a day. Like, when we're looking at 1,000 milligrams of calcium, just for an average adult, 1,200 milligrams for females in menopause. So that's just something that I can't sit back and just let go anymore. Not that I'm out there to hunt heads. That's not what I do either.
No, but it's good. You're just informing the population and just letting people know, which is good. And you do it in a simple way that people can understand. So the thing that I love most about you is in your posts, like you'll make them a bit funny, like they'll be interesting. You'll be out talking to the dog about it, and then you'll put up like any research links, things like that. So it's always backed up. You know what I mean? It's not just your biased opinion. Like what you're talking about, but then you're also just bringing to light where there's a lot of bad information out there, and there's people who are expert coaches or whatever, and it's like they actually haven't got the first clue about how to have someone be healthy. And I just think it's really important that we get into this industry. I think most people genuinely want to improve people's health, to help people,
and along the way it's very easy to get tracked into this fat loss at all costs. And it may be pressure from finances, maybe pressure from the client itself. It usually is, probably, let's face it. But I think just really sitting back and just learning the fundamentals of what has to happen with nutrition, and if that's not your scope, that's fine. Just integrate with someone who does, and that's one of the things I try and really coach the coaches I look after that are wanting to really further their knowledge in it. I'm like, expand your network. Like, go and sit down with a GP, go and sit down with a dietitian and work them into what you do. Too often we try to sort of isolate ourselves and be the one, where you don't necessarily have to be. And I do encourage people to learn, but at the same time, I encourage you to be around people that know. Find those mentors and find a way to fit it into your practice. So, it's just a case of educating. And look, I used to say when people know better, they do better. And I think I've eaten those words a little bit now, though, because people still do all sorts of crap. And a lot of people come to me going, "Oh, look, I'm following these plans, and it must be micronutrition deficiencies. That's why I'm not losing weight, or it must be a gut issue, and that's why I'm not losing weight." And a lot of the time, I'm kind of inside, I'm just listening, and I'm like, "Look,
it might be your overeating issue.
You're not going to get me to really bend calories in, calories out here." But whilst I think that's important to appreciate, I think what people really don't appreciate is that they can feel like they're dieting 99% of the time, but it's very easy to just remember the good things and this confirmation bias that we have, and then really look at the behaviors that are causing that overeating to occur, or to balance out the caloric deficit. And that's something I've been trying to really push amongst the education side of things with the facility I'm at the moment, is we look after general population and just looking at the reasons why people overeat. Because once you start to realize your food environment and how important that is, you can start to really intervene in ways that can positively influence a client or a member. And this comes back to what you were saying before about the flexible dieting aspect. For some people, they may successfully diet with, if they're on 2,500 calories a day, 250 calories is like a Twinkie or a Snickers bar, or whatever that is, and others won't. And this is the important distinction here. That doesn't mean that these people have like poor. We don't sort of sit here and go a case of willpower or a case of allowing them to beat themselves up. Some people probably shouldn't have a food environment or try to incorporate some of these things that are taking them further away from it. And I think some of the notable people in our industry are sort of proponents of flexible dieting, calling out clean eating, commas, as like it's going to cause eating disorders. And I kind of cringe at that as well. And I'm like, look, you really, if you want to look at the neurobiology and the psychology behind eating, you have to understand that these addiction-like behaviors that some people display with foods, and addiction in food is a little bit contentious amongst the experts itself, because we don't have withdrawals, okay, from certain foods, whereas
Hell yeah, we do.
how we classify addiction when it comes to things like smoking and drugs, that's one of the aspects that we look at. But I think everyone is kind of in agreement on the same page of these addictive-like behaviors. Yeah. And that's when I talk about, look, some people should probably abstain from having ice creams in the freezer. Yeah. 100%. Okay, because there's little effort to go get this really hyper-palatable, high-calorie food. Yeah. And we know that people that, are overweight or obese, they generally, underreport the snacks that they have and the food that they eat, and it's this confirmation bias, this Dunning-Kruger effect, and they'll come back to their coach or they're in a consult and they'll just claim my metabolism screwed it to my hormones. And whilst hormones play an important role in your physiology and your metabolism, the calories in, calories out is obviously the umbrella that everything's kind of still working with. And
I think a lot of people don't realise, like especially a lot of females that are dieting, that to get your minimum nutritional requirements per day, you probably need about just 1,500 calories of good food, roughly, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I put up
potassium and all those. Like I've always said to people, like for you to just hit your basic micronutrients, you're going to need to get at least 1,500 of those calories are going to have to be from real good food and a variety, and maybe hit 25-30 grams of fibre from fruits and vegetables out of that 1,500 calories, and then have a nice split of fats and carbohydrates and protein in there, and to basically get enough food variety in that 1,500 calories. So if you're a female and you're dieting on 1,200 calories, you're probably not hitting your target. So you can do that, but there's going to be a point in time where that's not going to fucking work. You can't stay on that forever.
Exactly. And I spend a lot of time explaining to people, don't feel like you're dieting forever. Like, that's a common scenario. Someone comes to you and there's like 5 years they've been dieting and they're still nowhere near their goal. They're not dieting for 5 years, but it just feels like that. Right? And you're absolutely right.
But they just live in that restrict like mindset, which is the people that generally are the ones that tend to overeat and binge.
Exactly. And once you push hard enough on that, it can come after a lot of tears. What you'll find is, 99.9% of the time, there's a realization of the things that don't get tracked and the activities that don't get done, and appreciation of their neat. So they're just walking around and fidgeting and doing that stuff just tends to lower as well. So, it's really coming back to that calories in, calories out. But you're absolutely right. Like, I start off most of my meal plans with around about a 1,600 calorie plan where all those micronutrients are hit, and then I build up from there. Okay, and then I'll individualize based on...
So the vertical diet, pretty much.
Is it? I've got
real vertically.
But and when I sort of put that up, I probably had like 20 or 30 requests for that template, and I'm like, I'll write that up one day when I finish doing what I'm doing at the moment, because I realised how powerful a tool that would be for trainers and coaches and people doing sports nutrition to have, because that's okay for someone like me who I just kind of know where to go within the databases. You've been doing it for a long time and you just know numbers of foods. But for someone who's sort of fairly new to it, where do they start? You know what I mean? It's just, they don't have a framework. So at least giving someone that framework and they understand which foods are supplying which, then they can just build upwards from there. So if you need to have a girl on 1,600 calories, or you need to have a guy on 3,600 calories. If you've built it out from 1,600, then you can do whatever the hell you like to get to 3,600. So there's 2,000 calories of you playing around with whatever's needed, but full well that you built it out from the start.
Yeah, well, it is true with the things that go untracked, because I proved that myself for my comp that I just had in February. So my weight was I've been eating on your plan, but then obviously because I'm kind of eating in a surplus, knowing I had room to come up for Pro Raw, I was like a little bit of, if he cooks something, I was like, oh cool, I'll pick at that in the kitchen because it's just come out of the oven, or just little things here and there. And predominantly we only have healthy food, especially because he's been on a diet for the first time in our life together, but whereas before he would just have a freezer full of Magnums or whatever it would be there, so with me I was like, okay, well I've got like 3 or 4 weeks out from my comp now, I've got to be 67.5, I don't necessarily want to cut, and I was only kind of maybe sitting, my weight would bounce between 68 and 69, and then 2 weeks before the comp I was like, okay, well I'll just eat everything on the plan, which I think I'm still on around 2,300 calories. It's a lot of food, food
Yeah.
when you're eating good, healthy food. And so I was like, okay, well, I just don't pick at all those things. And I came in under, at 67.
Yeah, easy,
without
exactly.
having to actually take any. I was like, maybe I'll just drop some carbs out this week, and then I didn't have to. So I was like, I just ate high carb meals every day that week.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I felt fine.
And there's a real issue with intuitive eating.
Yeah.
Intuitive
Well,
eating.
that's it. Yeah.
and,
If
you
you were
know,
eating, if you could eat intuitively, you wouldn't be fat.
Yeah.
Well, if I ate
Yeah.
intuitively, I'd eat ice creams
Yeah.
every meal.
Yeah.
So I'll sit down with a lot of people who tell me, they've got really good results by intuitive eating, but they're not in the shape currently.
Yeah.
With an intuitive eating, and I said, well, there's a problem with that
Yeah.
strategy. And the research kind of really explains some of the issues with why people may have problems with that. And it's this, like, to bring it back to sleep. If we don't sleep adequately, there's a chance of eating 200 to 300 calories more per meal.
Yeah.
Okay, when we're under stress, 75% of people will turn to probably eating more food. The other 25% will probably eat less
But
food.
100%, I do that. So I know when I'm tired, I'll be like,
Yeah.
I'll go and eat something. Well, especially when I worked in finance,
Yeah.
I was like, if I'd had a bad night, I'm like the shit that I would eat that I would never normally eat.
Exactly.
know?
And you're looking for food that is like that higher calorie, higher sugar, fat palatability combo. And it's just such an easy thing to do. And it's the same with, like, if you're eating with friends, the more people that are at the table, the more calories you're going to consume within any given meal. That's the likelihood of it. The more palatable you find a food. So if there's food palatability rating of 1 to 7, with 7 being really palatable. The difference in eating a food at like a palatability of a score of 3 or 4 to a 7, you're more likely to eat probably 200 to 300 calories more of that food.
Yeah.
When you go snacking, you generally look for something like that. These are all sort of important things to sort of understand as how quickly
and the social awareness of the second stomach with dessert.
Yeah, exactly. And this is when it comes down to the diversity of food. That's another thing. So, this is where you could even say that diversity, of which I am a big fan of for getting micronutrition.
Yeah.
But there is a double-edged sword component to diversity as well. So if you go to a buffet and you had 5 foods to select from versus 25 foods to select from, the research would indicate that you would eat far more when you have 25 foods. And this is what we're talking about, like when the waiter comes around, offers you dessert, even though you've had like a pasta and a pizza and a salad
and you've taken
potato
some food
wedges
home in a doggy bag.
and if he came out and offered you another pasta, but you already had the lion's share of the pasta you just had, you could probably turn that back. Well, he'd probably eat it, but you might turn that back. But if the waiter come out and said, would you like to see the dessert menu, and there was some cakes on there, even though you've unbuckled your belt 2 notches, you go, oh yeah, cool, and you can fit that in. Okay, it's got to do with the reward system in the brain, and your body and brain know what's about to happen, and it just fires off those pathways, and then before you know it, you've just managed to slam down another 500 calories. Okay, and these are the things that happen, and real life stuff that people do all the time, and it takes them further away from their goals with their fat loss or adhering to a nutrition plan. So, I think it's just context is everything. If your flexible dieting works for you and you don't have any of these issues, that's amazing. Okay, if you can still hit all your micronutrients, that's my caveat to it. Don't like flexible dieting that doesn't hit micronutrients. If you have to have a client go down to like low calories to get on stage, first of all, you'd ask the question, should they be getting on stage? If they have to get really low, how long do they have to be in that? Have you explained fully what's happening with the sacrifice of nutrition in doing so, and is there a plan or an action outcome after the events? These are the kind of conversations I want people to have, because otherwise, the typical client that comes and gets referred to me after an event or after a succession of diets and everything, they've done this the wrong way so many times, and the more we do it and the more we put on that weight after these dieting phases or events,
damage control.
Your body does not like that. The fat that you regain from those sort of behaviors is very hard to go back, and your body defends against fat loss very hard after that.
Yeah, I've seen that plenty of times in chicks who have crash dieted, and then we start to get them going well and training a lot less, and then eating a standard amount of calories, and they're like, I want to get a little bit of weight off, and I'm like, you're not ready. You need to, and they're really like, I could give it a go, let's see what happens, and then they just fight back. They drop down, and they starts to drop down for maybe a week or so, and then just goes boom. And it just doesn't matter what they do, it just won't go anywhere.
And look, your body is designed to defend that level of fatness, especially if you've gone through these yo-yo phases, and it will do what needs to be done. So it will it'll make you move less.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It'll increase your cravings and
Yeah.
desire for, foods and stuff like that. You're not as likely to be putting in the same performance, in your training sessions, which, plays a role in your progress forwards as well.
Yeah.
So, it's one thing that as an industry, I honestly think that we're making grounds there. I think that the education that coaches give clients across the board in the last 10 years has gotten better.
Yeah.
Like at any stage though, you have these tribes of carnivores at the moment, or vegans, or, like trying to cross their belief system into like a one strategy to fit everyone, which I just don't think is really the sensible way. That no one's buying into that kind of thing. But I think across the board, the education is getting out there.
Yeah. So, thoughts on the carnivore diet? Are you triggered?
Look, I mean, I think the carnivore diet could serve a purpose for someone at that particular time. May not be suitable moving forwards as well. You're going to have issues with getting things unless you're going to eat like offal. Okay, so if you're going to eat the organ meat, in which you can get like higher amounts of vitamin C and some of those types of things. But look, I've looked at it, and for me to I don't think I'd ever put someone on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand why people that have resolution of inflammatory conditions and gut issues in which they subside by that process of elimination can really be bought into the process.
100%.
And that definitely has some validity to it because you've removed some instigating foods that were causing mayhem.
Just a severe elimination diet.
It is. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it should be the one method that you use forever. Now,
100%.
You might feel really well for it on a time, and then you may have a period of time where you don't, and then you reintroduce your vegetables and you feel amazing. It's that ability to be able to... Humans are omnivores at the end of the day. Say what you like if we want to look at evolutionary biology, and you're probably very well suited to what your great grandparents ate in terms of your individual makeup that you're bringing. But at the end of the day, most people should be able to eat like quite a large diversity of foods, and not necessarily just a carnivore diet.
And if you look at that, I mean, you look at, we wouldn't have eaten the same thing every day or every meal or whatever. You would catch something and then you would catch something different. It's not like you would have a stock of whatever, I don't know, wild bush turkeys or whatever to catch, or it'd be venison every day. You'd eat that animal and then you'd go on to the next thing that you ate.
And I think that's important to understand. So the problem is with these modalities is people latch onto one particular aspect. So with the carnivore diet, it might be like, well, look how many plants were toxic until we had farming practices in which we could basically diversify the labor, and we ended up with society it is today, so that's pretty cool. But at the same token, we've really changed that food chain as well. So it's all well and good to sit back and say that, but at the same time, it can be very hard for a lot of people to hit all that micronutrition without incorporating some plant-based food. And when you look at the research and the data out there, it's pretty hard pressed to make a solid argument against plant-based food. Okay, which kind of means that you should be at least open-minded to other people choosing to eat plant-based food.
Yes.
So it's just remembering things like that.
And you're big on people eating offal. I've always tried to get people to eat that, and I mean, I think it's a sort of missing link in people's diet, because if you go at anyone that would have hunted an animal, first thing they would have done is pulled the liver out and ate it raw. It's the first thing.
Ate it.
Ate it. They would have eaten it.
You would have back then.
That's it.
You want to eat in the offal with me?
You would have eaten the offal straight away, and then you would have taken some of the meat, and you would have cooked some, and then you would have also then fermented some as well for later. And then it's we did it for a reason, and it made us survive for a reason.
But back then, but then even farmers, like nothing got wasted.
No, that's exactly right. And that's pretty much prolific throughout every culture throughout the world. They had
100%.
a lot of similarities between the pillars of health that they incorporated, even though that they had access to different animals or different plants or different vegetables, whatever it is. And I think modern consumerism, and again that diversification of labor. Now people have jobs where when you go to the supermarket and you see a fillet of chicken breast, it doesn't really look like an animal anymore. People that don't have that connection with that animals in the food chain, and that are going to be hard pressed to just easily incorporate that, especially if they never get brought up in a family that ate those kind of things before. But I would totally agree with you, and I think this is where those experts that put themselves into the ancestral health community have got a huge amount of insights that you could really appreciate. And I think in the fitness community we tend to really hunt the paleo guys and call them out and all that kind of thing, and it's unfortunate because I think some of the best minds have really established a large impact on people's health through taking into account the things that we did throughout our ancestral societies to ensure the health of the organism. And so if you look at Weston A. Price's work, and I've recommended Catherine Shanahan's Deep Nutrition book out, which I sort of call almost like a follow-up in a way to some of that work, where they looked at societies before the intervention of modern food, and right on the cusp, so where some of them didn't have access and some of them did, and they saw the amazing differences in health. And I think that's important to bear in mind. Is it saying that everyone has to eat a really strict paleo diet? And what is a paleo diet? We could just sit there and talk about for the rest of the podcast, because ultimately it comes back to whatever was accessible.
What was your what was that little infographic thing you put up the other day? And now there's relaxed. It wasn't relaxed.
Yeah, relaxed carnivore.
Relaxed carnivore. That's right.
I've been on Twitter a lot lately, because there's a lot of the PhD guys are on Twitter. Okay, they're not on Instagram, they're not on Facebook, but these guys are go to war on Twitter, and it's really funny. There's a lot of these carnivore keto guys, I suppose. They're sort of really sort of big proponents of this carbohydrate insulin model of obesity, and really go hard on anything carbohydrate now. And a lot of these neuroscientists and guys that are involved in the behavior side of things are just looking at it, just going, oh man, you're barking up the wrong tree. I think it's just important to take all that into account.
Speaking on that sort of carbohydrate front, I mean, a lot of people in the fitness industry base a lot of their diets around purely a lot of carbohydrate, and yes, it's good, and it's good for performance, and there's probably situations where you maybe need a little bit less carbohydrate because you are not insulin sensitive. But what are your thoughts on fat, as far as fat intake for performance and stuff like that?
I think do you mean as in a fat dominant
or just total fat intake? And as I always try to preach to people, get a broad spectrum of fats. Don't just
eat peanut butter.
Don't just chew, especially with the clean eaters, you'll get them, they'll have all low fat foods, high carbohydrate, and then their fat source is fucking peanut butter. You know what I mean? I'm you're probably missing a few other fats there that you need to get in. But even I've been able to put a lot of weight, muscle on skinnier guys, whereas or high metabolism guys that stay fairly lean, and we feed them carbohydrates, and it's like they just burn too hot, and they just keep burning through it. It's like you can't put that much weight on them, where we lower the carbohydrate intake a little bit and increase the fat intake, and then they actually start to gain some weight, even though the calories are essentially not much different as well.
Look, I mean, that's interesting. I think I say the same thing in terms of just generally speaking, lower fat diets and lower diversity of the fats within the diet. Okay, so and again, if we, like you say, a lot of people will probably waste the quality of the fats within the framework of the quantity that they have to play with. So usually when I'm taking a history of someone, I'm really trying to delve into the larger scope of what they've eaten over time. And so if I see someone who's got a history of a lot of processed food, just this really omega-6 enriched and trans fat enriched diet, then I'll probably take that into consideration when looking at their macronutrients, and perhaps thinking, okay, this person could probably do with some good fats, and I might need a little bit more fat to play with there. I don't think sacrificing a little bit of carbohydrate to allow a little bit more fat is going to have much effects on performance or body composition, but it may allow you to look at giving them the adequate fats that they need, but also the fat-soluble vitamins that are usually contained within those foods. So your vitamin E, vitamin K, D, A, and that's something that I think has really gone by the wayside. These fat-soluble vitamins, and bringing it back to Weston A. Price's work with this, ancestral eating is. this A, D, E, and K, they were foundational to our health, and we have, if anything, demonized vitamin A, totally forgotten about vitamin E and K, and become obsessed with vitamin D.
Exactly.
And from a pill rather than the sun, rather than getting out, getting some UV exposure. So, the scare on vitamin A is, when you look at the literature that's based on it, I think that they will be laughed at today if, we base our recommendations to pregnant women, based around some of that really early research that was done. And, we sort of opt for more carotenoid-rich foods like carrots and capsicums, which are the precursor to vitamin A.
Yeah, which is beta-carotene, which is not. What's the conversion rate like?
Well, the conversion is different for everyone. So to bring it back to this genetic report, if you look at your BCMO genes, basically the beta-carotene converting genes, some people will convert it fine, so you'll eat a carrot and get lots of vitamin A, and 50% of people will do it half as well, and then like 25% of people will do it like terribly. And so this is, when it comes to, again, choosing what you want to, so say you want to adopt a vegan lifestyle and only eat plant-based, but you have horrible genes that converting beta-carotene into vitamin A or retinol, you're going to be hard pressed. Okay, so it's not going to be as easy for you. Not saying that you can't do it, but it just gives rise to how individually one may or be suited to one particular or another. And think coming back to the offal, for instance, so liver, one of the highest sources of vitamin A. Okay,
cod liver oil.
Okay,
the old health tonic.
Exactly. It's funny.
Like forgotten about health tonic.
Yeah, like I used to have supplement shops, and you'd always be looking for some of the latest and greatest supplements to come out. And then it's funny how things come full circle. You grow up a little bit and go, oh man, I'm like recommending the things that the naturopaths were recommending 10, 15 years ago. I've come back to like the cod liver oil instead of so much like high dose of EPA or something like that, or come back to like Swedish bitters as a remedy. I've realized like people need just this bit of food to stimulate the liver and the gallbladder with the bile production, and those kind of things as well. So it's interesting.
It always comes full circle.
It does. It does. And it's kind of interesting, like sort of sitting on the sidelines now that I've been through a couple of revolutions of that circle, and you just can sort of watch the social media scene get obsessive about one thing and go, just wait, 2 or 3 years will be the exact opposite thing. We'll have another dozen diet books come out in January, and we'll be talking about, how dumb were we back then in 2018 or 2019, sorry. So
And you look at you do get blood work done with your clients regularly as well, and you look at what are some of the top markers you look for in blood work with people?
Look, it depends on the client, obviously. So I probably get a lot of guys that have used anabolic steroids, and they've come to me after the fact, and blood work is usually pretty messy, and it's usually about getting them in contact with the right GP or endocrinologist to sort of let them have a network. That's one of the main things that I really try to achieve with my clients, is trying to get them away from the stigma associated with a lot of GPs. If you don't know them and they're not like a family doctor, and you've got 10 minutes with them, and a male walks in there and starts talking about this, they'll just get thrown out, and they don't want that. So it's about sort of establishing that. So with a lot of these guys, we'll be looking at like the LFTs and their kidney electrolytes. I think homocysteine is a really important one. Lipids. There's telltale things. So oxidized LDL is one that I really like to look at as well. Ferritin, iron studies. When a lot of these guys are eating a lot of red meat, they're running a lot of gear, and they're inflamed, and their ferritin levels are through the roof. And whilst iron is very important, too much iron, and when those ferritin markers are through the roof, it's like a match, and it's going to cause
in
a
that
lot
environment too, with the anabolic pump and everything.
That's right. You're taking up so much iron, and don't have like a way to really get that out of their body. So we'd be talking about like letting out blood or giving blood, to really try and get some of those iron stores out of the body. Which
a lot of guys don't do.
They don't. And so that's one of the things I try and really show them. Look, just some basic things like this, and they've never been told that before. So just looking at that, it's like looking at certain supplements that might go along with them when they choose to do things like that as well. But more than important, it's just to have them have a network and have a strategy going in, being in, getting out. And going from there. I think a lot of guys need to be thinking about looking at fertility earlier on. Okay, so we've got enough problems with fertility for males. Aside from going down that, our sperm counts have dropped 50% in 40 years. It's and it's just like our exposure to certain chemicals that are anti-androgenic or estrogenic, and we're just kind of seeing that even at very low doses, these things can be massive issues, which was previously unrecognised. And I think the next couple of years you'll see some more work in that area. There's even some great Australian researchers sort of showing that now too. It's just important things to remember. But yeah, basic blood work I think can be very insightful, and it's just a case of working with a practitioner or a doctor who's actually going to take the time. And I think that's where individuals don't find that person. We almost need like a ranking system for the doctors to go like, this guy was 5 stars, he spent the time with me, and having access to it. And that's one of the things, I was just at another clinic on Wednesday setting up another relationship with a doctor, and that's probably my 4th in the last 18 months, just so that I've got these guys, they understand what I do, they understand the type of person that I want to send them, and these guys thank me for it. So it's good.
I find that very hard to get a lot of blood work done by doctors. I send them a list and I'm like, explain to him what you've been taking, what you've been doing, but half of them just have no idea. Like I've had some that go, I don't even know what SUS 250 is, and it's like, you got a PD, you should have a PDR on your desk, you should be able to look that up and look it up and go, oh, okay, that's what he's taking. But that's very, very clueless to a lot of the stuff that goes on. And
I think it's about taking the time out from our sometimes busy schedules to go and find that out. So whenever I'm traveling to another city, I'm always asking like the coaches or the people that I meet there about like how good is their doctor, because I want to basically try and delve a relationship with my online clients as well, and it takes time and effort out of ourselves to do that. And like I've been burnt a few times before with my consultative work, so my clients who I don't get to spend a lot of time with, like a one-off consultation or something, and I've sent them to someone I've built up a really good relationship with, only to have them destroy it in a single session. So I don't give out my doctors' names nor on a podcast, because they're busy guys, and ultimately they got into what they do to help people as well, and unfortunately we're bringing to the table requests that may or may not be seen as something that's important in their day. So it's about sort of creating that relationship.
And then you alluded to about high intake of red meat with a lot of guys in the fitness industry, and a lot of people probably just don't eat enough seafood. But then how's the quality of the seafood? A lot of the stuff we're getting now is farmed, so what's your sort of take on that? I think again, like context is everything here. So I'm not familiar with like a lot of different farming practices throughout the world. Like I had to look into our salmon farming recently down there in Tasmania, and there's been some major issues, I suppose, with where the 3 big commercial suppliers of salmon are actually farming the salmon. It's not cold enough here. Australia's not cold enough. So they've had a lot of issues with the environment. They've had a lot of issues with the health of the actual salmon, with some huge die-offs occur in that process. And it led me to looking up a couple of places in New Zealand where they've got like glacier cold rivers. That's where salmon would want to be. And the way that they farm them and raise them is just leagues above what I've seen here in Australia. I think out of the big 3 that we've got here, Huon is probably the ones that are putting in a lot of transparency, because they had to, because the regulators sort of went through them, I think back in 2014, 2015 after some stuff happened down there. And I think that's important. I think one of the other things that I'm trying to get more into as well is just looking at the sustainability. So there's apps now, in Australia here we have an app which will show you which fish are sustainable, and you can try and eat according to that. It's like a traffic light system, so red, green, orange. What app's that? Do you know what it's called?
I'd have to ask the wife. I'm sure we can just Google that. But anyway, I think unfortunately barramundi wasn't green, which was a real shame for me. But look, it's something that as I sort of grow some of my businesses, I always said that I would actually try to be involved a little bit in the sustainability of the oceans, because I just think that we could be doing more on that front and creating that awareness. And the ocean can provide an abundance of sustenance to us,
Yeah.
and relieve some of the pressures of what we have happening in the agricultural side of things with land-based animals, which it's always a contentious topic, with animal rights versus the quality of the meat and the fats, and like grain-fed versus grass-fed, and that. So sometimes I just what's the solution here? Couldn't we focus on the oceans a little bit more? And it's not that red meat's inherently bad. I love eating red meat myself. I think that there's definitely times when I'll get someone's blood work back and look at that iron and go, wow. We're actually going to go focus on some chicken and some fish and that kind of thing. And where others, you'll do the exact opposite. You're like, okay, we really need to focus on some offal and some red meat here. You're going to thrive on it. So I think when you look at a lot of people's complaint against good quality produce in general, meat being particularly expensive, when you start buying organic or grass fed, that'll be especially for bodybuilders and powerlifters that have to eat huge amounts of protein. It may be one of the reasons that they choose not to do it, but when you look at the percentage of income that we spend these days versus what we had to spend 100 years ago, everything's cheaper than it ever was. It really comes down to values, and what we really choose to spend that money on. And you may not be able to buy organic eye fillet, but you can buy organic meat,
blade steak, or
there's so many options. And I think bringing it back to,
I mean, we still have some really good, obviously just normal grass-fed meat in Australia that's not organic. You know what I mean? They haven't paid for their organic certification, and that's a lot of people think that it's the same as America. Like my cousins are cow farmers, and people are like, oh, cow's milk has got. My cousins are cow farmers. They can't afford to pump the cows with growth hormone. The cows go to one paddock, they move them to the next paddock the next day, and then they keep moving them from paddock to paddock, and they get up in the morning and they milk them. There's no fucking shit going on. It's just and they're poor as fuck because they got to fight for the buy up from the supermarket.
I think it's important. I have this conversation a lot with clients. Bringing it back to Benson, for instance, is one of the things that I'll often do is just expose them to different methods of cooking, slow cooking, and ways that you can actually get more collagenous cuts of meat rather than just the fresh cuts, which adds a whole nother benefit to one's health. But also encourage them to find things like markets or small farmers markets, and that does a couple of things. One, it changes the food environment. I literally got off the phone with one of my guys who's check-in this morning, who's eaten a Magnum every single night for the last week, because he goes to a big chain supermarket. It's same food cues. By the time he walks out, he's bought the packet of Magnums, and that trip in itself is the brain knows what's coming.
It's a trigger.
So it's a trigger. So one of the things we can do is change the environment. Instantaneously you break that habit routine, and get him going to a farmer's market. But by the same token, you build up a relationship with these locals, these farmers, and actually understand.
And then at least you're paying the farmer too as well, which is doing awesome for their livelihood. There's no middleman.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You're actually paying the guy, getting full money for his cattle.
And they'll give you insights into a lot of these guys will be very open about whether they are organic but don't have the certification, or whether they're using pesticides or the animal treatment, the welfare. All those kind of questions can be asked. The problem is that people don't get down to these things because they didn't get raised like that. They haven't sort of taken the time to just Google and find out where one is. It's not actually that hard. It just often takes planting the seed. And that's one of the things that I enjoy doing, is just literally I'll take someone who was doing the same thing, just and look, when I had supplement stores in big chain shopping centres, one of the saddest food environments I've seen is a shopping centre food court. Just when you would look around at the body language and the of people consuming those foods, it was just, for me, it was just, if you were an alien and came down from space and you saw that, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? It's just a real sad sort of environment. Listen, you just want to understand that you can put yourself in much better environments, surround yourself with different foods, and just not do just what you were brought up with. Just because you weren't exposed to offal, just because you weren't exposed to farmers markets, we're in the age of information. It's so easy to find this stuff. I actually just was watching a YouTube video, and I found out what woofing is. Have you heard of woofing?
No.
I can't can't remember what the thing is. It's like where you can basically go do short stays with organic farmers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so like you literally go do like 4 to 6 hours work per day, and they rent and they board and feed you.
Oh, cool.
And I said to Zoe, I was like, "Oh, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, not to
Yeah.
skip on our next
Yeah.
holiday or anything.
Yeah.
But like I'm like,
Yeah, we
could-
would love to do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like you pay for like a membership or something, and you can be the the person who does the service, and then the farmers are there, and you just connect online, and you just go do some work for them. So like some of them are just like old ladies that have got the farm, and they just want like veggie patch done, or they can just sort of teach you what they do at their farm. And so you really get absorbing yourself in someone's life for a period of time.
That's
like,
cool.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And, so I was like, why don't I know about this? Yeah. There's 4,000 members in the Australian one, and I was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And you can tell they get a lot of backpackers and tourists that come through, and they're just honestly looking to just throw themselves into someone's life. They're not even worrying about rent. They're getting fed, and they're just learning, like at a time. So
backpackers probably experience more in our country than what we ever do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my clients this morning, he's lived in Melbourne. I think his whole life, he's just going out to the 1,000 Steps, which down here is like one of the trail runs that's not far away whatsoever.
Yeah.
But you can go and do like a bit of a run or a walk up there, and it's just a really nice escape from the city as such. But it's something like 30 minutes from here.
Yeah.
And it's like we're just going to be tourists in our own city.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
cool
like,
though.
It is cool, but you
Yeah.
just stand back and go, that's just so crazy that you can live here for this long and
not
do
have done it.
something
Yeah,
so
but
basic.
that's what people, because I lived in the UK for a long time, and then people will come here, or I would have met people over there, and they're, have you done this? Have you done that? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's the same as I have never been to Ayers Rock.
Yeah.
I need to go. Like,
Yeah.
why have I not been to? I want to go to the. I don't know
Yeah,
why I
exactly.
haven't.
Yeah.
Why have we not done that? You know,
Yeah.
like it's like, so anyone that I know that's been there is like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You should go there.
Yeah.
You live in Australia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of scenarios where that happens. But whenever we go away, we'll always look up where a local farmer's market is. Or even a couple, if we're driving home and it's a long drive. We'll stop at a couple of things, get some new stuff.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good to...
Yeah, well, just even with that food variety thing, like you're saying, like I always had the theory is like I don't want to buy from the same butcher every week, day in, day out, because I'm most likely getting the same breed of cattle as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like same cattle that's been eating the same nutrients. So like I might buy it from this butcher one week, and then I'll go to a different butcher another week, and then I might go to a farmer's market, or you might, like if you can't afford organic all the time, maybe once a fortnight you buy from the organic store, and then the other week you buy from Costco or something like that, and that spreads the cost. Instead of like, say it's $25 a kilo here and $15 a kilo here, well now you're only really paying $18 a kilo or $20 a kilo on average. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just another way, again, more food exposure to good or bad, and then just evening out what you're spending as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I know some people listening to this are probably going to be really thrown by this whole talk of organic, and especially, I throw myself into research all the time, and last year when I was writing up this simple biochemistry course for trainers, I was learning so much stuff that I was like, how do I not know this? Some of the literature on just these endocrine disrupting chemicals that are out there, and they're discovering now they're not sort of linear, so like not just a high dose high effect situation. We have this what's called a non-monotonic dose curve, which previously studied very low dosages of these chemicals. They're finding have these massive effect on hormones, and they're not studied in humans, and we haven't done this research. And since World War II, and we've become this petrochemical global entity, there's so many chemicals coming out that never ever get tested. We just cannot keep up with that testing, and so when you put the pieces together, and unfortunately at this stage you're really forced to just kind of piece together what's there and like listen to the experts talk about this. From my perspective, there's enough there for me to have this healthy skepticism of it's okay or whatever. That's okay, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to do me. Okay. And until I've seen some better evidence that things are okay, I'll just keep doing me. And me feels good not having too many chemicals.
Who was telling us just the other day about one of their relatives had a farm, and when they were going to spray something, they had to take their livestock in. Because the livestock would die. It was for the crops, wasn't it?
The crops next door or whatever. And when they were spraying, I can't remember what it was, but when they sprayed this stuff, they're like, you have to keep your animals away. And then they had was it a dog or a cat that got out or something, and then it ate something that was that was sprayed by the crops and it was fucking dead the next day. You know what I mean? So it's
unfortunately,
the crops are growing to feed us.
Yeah,
you know, it's just
I
like,
know this is right.
So.
I had a client last year who was a actually, I want to call her out on this. She was a purchaser for a very big supermarket chain here in Australia, and so she would travel around the world to get fresh produce, so fruit and veggies and things like that. And then when she explained to me what they used to do to store those fruit and veggies, I was like, whoa, okay, so like the sheer volume and the style of chemicals that they were using, and there was no one allowed in those bunkers or those silos for a very long time when they would do that. And this is the kind of stuff it looks very fresh and amazing, and everything looks the same on the
shelf.
Supermarket shelf, and I'm just like, this is crazy. I'm just not
You've got a
convinced.
capsicum that's like 18 months old.
How
is it not rotted?
From halfway around the world. So there's just things like that where just like, you know, you can maintain a healthy skepticism of the worth of spending money on being organic, having organic food. That's fine. And I think, you know, everyone else should be entitled to have that same level of, until you show me really that it's, you know.
Well, I mean, if you just even think about it, like now, like even with like just detecting drugs, like the fact that what's his name, the UFC fighter got pinched with Turinabol in his system, and that was the long metabolites, so like that stuff that's been in there for 18 months at like such a micro level, that's an argument that they shouldn't be testing that sensitive. And it's like, well, if that's still in your system, what makes you think there's a lot of fucking other shit that's still not sitting in your system, you know? Like, it's got to be...
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, there's like, okay.
And again, detoxification, that word is so polarizing in our community, and I've done posts on this before, because I just think it's ridiculous that it is that polarizing when you look at it from a biochemical perspective. It's just a set of processes, you know, that happens all the time, never stops. But, you know, I think a lot of the reason it comes undone is because of these like out there kind of things that people will do to detoxify, and the money that gets spent on it, and the marketing that goes behind it. And let's face it, a lot of it is absolutely cringeworthy. But, you know, when I look at some of the studies on saunas, so sauna, for instance, is one of those great habits or interventions that you can use. It actually does have a lot of data on it. And it doesn't have to be an infrared sauna or anything fancy. Like when you look at saunas and look at the ability for the body to be able to excrete a lot of chemicals through sweat, like some of those chemicals are excreted far more through the skin than through your urine or your feces, getting them out that way. And that's unfortunately where this hyper focus goes again when you walk into a supplement store, or, you know, you go and see someone who's got all these supplements and they just want to throw those at you. But, you know, sweating and, you know, using sauna and, you know, all those kind of things are very good interventions.
And then just hitting your micronutrients, because there's different phases of detox, and the supplement that's going to stimulate what is it, phase 2 or phase 3 generally? What about the rest of the phases?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when you realize, like, you know, detoxification has phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and the thing that you're taking can upregulate one phase and downregulate the other. And you're like, well, what are you actually doing? And so it's far more complicated than a lot of people.
It's more complicated than a lemon drink.
Yeah, I was going to say, the lemon diet's not good, guys.
It's more complicated than celery juice, guys.
Yeah, exactly. So and you know, it's just one of those funny issues.
So talk to us about the benefits of slow cooking meat and bones and stuff like that, getting like basically the glycine and all the sort of proline and all that sort of stuff. So look, I think, you know, if someone is going to make an argument against too much meat, as far as like health concerns, like there is potential, like some validity in terms of the lean cuts of meat are very high in a particular amino acid called methionine. And when you look at the data with high methionine diets, it appears that there can be some negative health consequences with that. But when you look at the collagenous cuts of meat, so things like your lamb shanks or, you know, bone-in meats, lamb shoulder, ossobuco, those kind of things, collagen's very rich, and, you know, by weight I think it's around about 30% glycine, and, you know, you have this hydroxyproline and these other amino acids in it, and glycine actually buffers out this methionine. So you know, we have a large requirement for glycine. Glycine is very important. We use it to build
collagen in our own bodies, which is one of our most abundant proteins, making up bone and skeletal muscle, but also we use it to build our glutathione. Okay, so main antioxidant, and we use it for detoxification. So glycine, very important inhibitory neurotransmitter, helping you calm down, and you'll see it in formulas bound to magnesium and salt as such. The issue is that we can have a huge demand for glycine, but we don't really have a capacity to synthesize that much of it internally ourselves. So you could consider that a conditionally essential case for getting enough glycine into the body. And the easiest way to get glycine is through these collagen or collagenous cuts of meat. So most of my clients, if they can't do that at the start, then we'll have them on bone broths or various stocks. Bone broths are generally a little bit better because they're just higher in protein, which means they're higher in amino acids, which means they're higher in glycine. But you'll have a lot of companies these days that'll do the dried forms in like a supplement as such that you can just throw in and add to things, or like a syrup. So there's various ways of getting that, and there's protein powders now obviously that are like hydrolyzed collagen protein powder, very high in that glycine as well. So it really comes down to, again, finding the best to suit the person. I'm always looking for ways for people not to supplement, and I always say to them, I'm the guy that used to own supplement shops, so I hope you take the authenticity behind what I'm saying here, is that I think supplements can be very worthwhile, especially for like hard training individuals, or when the body is under a lot of physiological stress. Absolutely, it can be very beneficial. But why don't we just keep building that foundation of nutrition? As much as we can. Don't never rest on our laurels, because it's a slippery slope when you just start to try and out supplement your habits. Before you know it, you're just relying so much more upon
Well,
them.
it's a supplement to a healthy lifestyle, right? And people just start to rely solely on that. So we just had the camera time out, but we're back.
Like all I was saying was that I think it's a very common scenario when someone will come in and they're bringing shopping bags worth of supplements, and they don't know why they're taking what anymore. This person, this coach told them to take this pharmacist recommended this online thing that their friend was taking, they're taking that as well. And they don't know what they're taking and why they're taking it. And one of the things I think is important is just to, if you're going to take a supplement, look for ways in which you can unsupplement. Okay, so I think people think that if they feel good on something, they have to always take that. And I actually think it's worthwhile. Once you feel good, you should try removing. And that may go against what people think is the right thing to do, but I think that a lot of the times when you correct something that was missing, and you've in the meantime put in the work to change your behaviors and your nutrition and all that, then a lot of the times the outcome that you really want is to unsupplement. So
well, I think people just jump to supplements too quick, and they just like what can I do? And it's like, well, you can't even hit 4 meals. You can't even get enough sleep, and then there's this and that. It's like, what are you trying to supplement for? And I like people even with protein shakes. I'm like, don't drink a protein shake unless you absolutely have to. The whey does not have as much nutrients as a steak or as a piece of fish or whatever. Why have a shake? Why can't you? I can understand there's going to be some scenarios, fine, but just try and treat it like a protein source and vary it as well. Don't just have just whey protein every time as well.
And I think that comes back down to what you've got to play with. Whatever your macro/caloric structure is, and for some people that's not very much. So if you go in there with protein shakes and protein bars, and I kind of loathe protein bars. I just look at what's in the back of it, and maybe 100 to 250 calories of what the hell. And maybe it's because I just had to sell them every single day for
but
10,
there's also
15 years
been times when I was dieting, and I was like the scenario where I wasn't organised, I didn't have a meal planned, and I knew then I was going to go out and I was going to meet someone, or meet my mum and go to the movies or whatever. I was like, oh fuck, I didn't get my meal, or do something, or I'll just quickly go into the supplement shop and I'll get a protein bar, so at least then I'm not going to have the popcorn or whatever, when I had to be really strict. And then I eat it, and I'd get halfway through and I'd be like, I would have just been better off fasting, because this tastes like crap, and now I've just wasted 200 calories when I didn't have much in my window anyway. And I was like,
that's right. And I think even the word convenience is a double-edged sword. Okay, and I used to think that when people had convenience, you could get them on the right path of things. And what I really come to discover after that is that it goes both ways.
Yeah.
So if the protein bar is convenient for you to hit your macros, I think a lot of people go with convenience in a way that drives them further away from their goals as well.
Yeah.
And that was like a real paradigm shift for me when I realized, okay, cool, you've got someone who's super busy and can't change these behaviors straight off the bat. Sort of tantalize them with what they want, which is a bit of convenience, but build in the behaviors, which is what they need. Okay, and realize at some point you want those two to merge and really the behaviors to take over away from the convenience. And because ultimately what happens is the busy people get unbusy. And unbusy people generally become healthy. So I think that's a process, and again, it's just the evolution of working with someone. And I suppose that's why I don't work with people for short time frames anymore, except for the consultative work that I do. When I'm coaching people, a lot of the times, admittedly, I probably get referred more harder cases than easy cases these days, but just seeing someone change through that journey is amazing. And better look at them like 1 year later, and one of my good mates who was a client, came to me, he was eating Maccas 3 or 4 times a day. That was his diet for years, and then to look at what he does now, and it's just like, man, we just look back and laugh. And that's something I think we get into this to sort of change lives, get people healthy, and along the process it's very easy to get veered into a corner of doing things which you just don't think are the best for that person, and it's about take yourself back and realize why you're doing it.
Absolutely.
And then what about you track metrics as well, like HRV and stuff like that, and what have you found as far as on that front, and what do you like to track?
Yeah, so I think with technology, it's really about what sticks. Okay, there's so many metrics that you could track. What are the ones that actually make someone healthy or make them make that behavior change? Okay, and that's why I've talked about the Oura Ring a lot. It's an expensive piece of tech for sleep and heart rate variability and body temperature and stuff like that, but it's the one thing that when I wake up and I do my morning sort of rituals, one of those rituals is kind of checking how my sleep was, because I always came from bad sleep, which is kind of why I'm so adamant and ruthless about people getting good sleep. It stems from
that's the first thing I do when I wake up, is check how my sleep was.
And look, I don't let that get me down for the day, but it's instantly a look of how I can improve. I will recognize the behaviors or whatever it was the day before that led to that occurrence. And I like using that for clients. So the Sleep Cycle app, which is available on iPhone, or I can't remember what the one is for Android, that is something I'll often start with people. It's definitely not bulletproof. If Lauren was using it would just catch you resting and snoring all night, and it would look like her sleep's really bad. But it can often get someone started on that track. But using different heart rate variability bands or heart rate monitors, I think is really important as well. I think a blood pressure cuff is really important. So all my boys pretty much take their blood pressure and make sure that's right. And if it's not, then we put measures in place that really look at addressing that. And that's sort of techniques looking at stress. It's doing certain conditioning and ensuring that we're using the right kind of dietary interventions to look at their blood pressure. But sleep, heart, blood glucose a little bit. I think that's one which certain clients can wrap their head around. It's a little bit finicky. And I suppose it doesn't stick as easy as something like a Fitbit or an Oura Ring or a Morpheus band or any of those things. And a lot of these, even the Garmin's these days, they're measuring certain metrics and putting them together in an algorithm which gives you a recovery score or a stress score. And you can sit here and debate the validity of each scores. But I think ultimately, if you're taking on a general population client who maybe just wants something nice and simple that sums it all together in a traffic light system or a score out of 10 or 100, whatever it is, that is enough for a lot of these guys and girls to make some serious behavior changes or appreciate the changes in their health when perhaps previously they were so hyper-focused on the scale. And that's so important. That's one thing that I noticed has been an absolute game changer in terms of the type of clientele that I deal with and watching them evolve as a person away from this super hyper focus on what's actually happening intra-week with their body composition and freaking out. So those metrics can be really good.
Yeah.
It's just finding what sticks with what people and not freaking them out again. Like, so going back to certain things with certain people are just not the right thing because they stress out over it.
Yeah. And how have you found the Aura Ring compared to all the other devices? Do you rate that as your top tracking device, or?
Yeah, look, I mean, it depends what you're after.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, I have a heavy bias towards sleep.
Yeah.
So this, in terms of the metrics for sleep, is fantastic.
Yes.
So you can listen to I forget the CEO's name, but he's done a few podcasts now, and he talks about how sensitive the data is, being on the finger rather than the wrist, how much data it actually gets.
Infrared as opposed to...
That's right. They actually getting a lot of the data through the day, which they're not releasing yet because I think they're just figuring out the way that they're going to put that on the on the actual app on the phone so people can see it in a way that's useful. But it has the capacity, this Gen 2, which is a little bit cooler than the Gen 1 that originally looked like a big mood ring that it's not wearing. But I broke
part bro, part hippie.
Yeah, exactly. And look at that. That was sort of probably one of the downsides of the ring is that for people like us, we can't get on a barbell and deadlift with this thing on. I think that's pretty much how I broke the first one when I was just working with clients. I would never train with it on, but PTing. And I think I just smashed it up against some plates a few times and just knocked it around. So that would be its cons in comparison to like a Garmin watch or a band or something like that. So it really depends on what you want to track. I think some of the intra-training devices can be very useful. Okay, I think heart rate training, we were just talking about Joel Jamison's work, I think before this turned it on. And I think he's got an amazing amount of experience and data and athletes that he's worked with over the years that pulls together like a very good algorithm with his products that a beginner or even advanced a person can then use that to know when to push with their training, know when to peel back, know when to incorporate some more recovery measures, and just being part of that process and teaching them along the way.
Well, we didn't have our check-in today because I am here. So my HRV, I generally, as you know, I'm generally green. Maybe a couple of yellows will drop in there every now and then. And then what day was it? Friday, I think. Red. Like out of nowhere, I just had a stream of green and then just like bang, and it was like whoa. And I knew that the few nights of having a bad sleep, I was just like, okay, it's catching up with me. I'm making sure I'm getting real strict with myself tonight because we had the course that we ran the technical lifting course yesterday. So it's funny just to see the data there and just to have it, like everything's out of whack. Mostly my sleep was out of whack for a few days in a row, and then it just dropped down like that. But I didn't need to train or do anything.
And they're not infallible either, though. I had a conversation, I think, about 3 weeks ago when one of my strongman boys from Queensland was going into States before the Arnolds, and he was like, I think it was like the Tuesday, the comp was on the weekend, and he pulled a red, like out of nowhere, and he's like, what the hell's going on? Should I not train today? And I was just like, this is the recovery score, which is like the amalgamation of the metrics. And I said, dude, just send me the individual metrics for a sec. Just screenshot them and send it to me. And I can't remember off the tip of my head what it was, but something had gone really high. Whether it was his heart rate variability or... No, not his heart rate, but like his, whether his sleep, he's a shift worker, so he's a nurse as well. And I don't know if he'd got a couple of extra hours of sleep or whatever it is, but the way the algorithm, I think, works is...
2 weeks.
So it's comparing it to the previous data, outside of certain standard deviations. So even though he might have got some extra sleep, it saw that as like a big code red. And when I saw it, I was like, how do you feel? He's like, I feel amazing. And I was like, okay, cool. Go crush it, bro. So he was like, oh, cool. And then he went in there and just like cleaned up. He demolished it. And that was just really cool because the products are good, but sometimes you need to just know how to interpret.
You got to do it with how you feel too. Like I noticed that because I had the original Bioforce when it came out. And I started using that, and I was using it while I was doing strongman, and it's good. It was good, but then I'd find there was times I was in a red, and then I have a real good workout, and then times that I was like green and it was shit. And I was like, but then I started to look at not just like started to look at my HRV, and then I started to look at my resting heart rate as well. And I've noticed that with the Morpheus, sometimes they'll say I'm fucking 100% or 98%, and I'm like, I know I'm not 98%, but like my heart rate could have been trending up slowly over the last 2 weeks as I'm getting into the heavy end of a block, and I'm fucking cooked. But because the last 2 weeks the heart rate's already been high, it's saying, well, that's a normal fucking heart rate for me. It's not just a spike. And I'm like, well, I know that's my heart rate's up 5 points than what it should be. So I'm actually cooked now. I need a deload. So sometimes you just you got to look at
and this is where when you get deep into the data, like you have to appreciate that like athletes operate well or perform well at a given task or event with generally what they've trained with, and so in spite of what might look like a bad score as far as a product algorithm goes, it may be the score that's perfect for them and like leading up to it. So I think that's important to appreciate, and that's why when I have an athlete and looking at these metrics, one of the things I'm looking for is like, how is training going with said metrics? Because you may not line up with like that bell curve of like the general guidelines of like what you should then go and do based on the data. And so that's only something from time, and I think that's an important sort of thing to trial out when you first start using these products. So rather than just take it as like, oh, red means stop.
Red means I can't do anything today.
Like rather than do that, I think there's this like greasing period where you just kind of just train and just assume it's all wrong for now. And let's just see what happens. And then the bits will fall into place as you realize, oh, I really wasn't great after 2 oranges and then a red. You know what I mean? I bounced back into the green and I looked really good. So again, every product's different, every person's different.
I know John Wellborn would say on his podcast, he'd saying like he'd do his HRV but actually wouldn't look at it till after that afternoon, because he didn't want to use it as a bias. He'd go in and start warming up, how do I feel, you know what I mean, and then he'd fucking have a shit workout and look I was in a red. I think it's difficult to look at from a lens that's like right up close, in terms of that data, and sometimes it's better to stand back and actually appreciate the trends of it over time, because as you say, like you can pull a red on a day and go out there and bust out a PB, 100%, feel amazing. All right, so tell us a bit about your education thing you got going, your Attain education. What's that? And
so Attain is a business I started late 2017, it would be, and it was just based on, I coach a lot of coaches, and a lot of them were looking for mentoring, and I did do some mentoring back then. I had time, and I was mentoring people in different aspects of the kind of things I do, and a lot of it was science based, meaning I was dealing with a lot of very smart coaches who were coming and doing like appointments with me or getting some coaching done, and we would just end up discussing facets of the biochemistry or like how to research or like things that they were interested in, and also just guiding them in where to go to learn things. I think that's something that when I'm teaching staff, that's one of the things they love, is where do you go to learn this, and that sets them on their journey as well. And rather than give them the answers, give them the path,
the knowledge,
so they can sort of go and
give a man a fish you'll eat for a day.
That's right. So and I would speak to a lot of these people who had done other courses, and when I would ask them, what are you using, like how's it going, and they always seem to be stuck, and I'd be like, okay, why are you stuck? And it was just because, the presenter was amazing, the information was amazing, I tried certain things and it worked, and then I tried other, and then things just wouldn't work. And one of the gaps I suppose I had from these people that were inquiring and that I was mentoring is that they just didn't have the experience with like some of the fundamentals of science. And it's, you don't have to know a lot of science to be a good coach. I'm not saying that you need that. You can refer out to a lot of things, but I think I like to stay in my lane but learn outside every freaking lane I can get. Because what I come to realize is like how so many things are connected in the network of people that I create. So I've been at physiotherapist course this year, I've been at chiropractic courses this year, and it's amazing how many things come together in the networks I build out from that. So one of the things I realized I kept doing over and over was bringing it back to nutritional biochemistry. So talking about like what these vitamins and minerals do. So when people walk into a supplement store and they go, I'm really stressed, I have no energy, and the supplement the salesperson goes, oh, here, you need to take this B vitamin, and then they just do it, and it's like, okay, like let's look at some of the what do B vitamins actually do, how do they work, which ones work, how do you build those out in a diet? When you go to a doctor and you get your blood work done, what are some of the B vitamins you can look at, and then what would you do with the data from there?
Yeah.
So it was really just about a heavy bias towards nutritional biochemistry, understanding some of these pathways, and creating a course from there. It doesn't have to be just for coaches. I kind of started off doing that, but then I had a few dietitians in it, a few nutritionists. I think there's a naturopath in it as well now. Cool. So and that's just because I think with all of these modalities, like I think a lot of us would benefit from knowing and understanding some of that more fundamental science, so that when you hear another presenter on a podcast and they start talking about MTHFR or whatever it is, you just bring the image to your mind, and you go, oh yeah, vitamin B2 and methylfolate, and you can sort of your brain can do what it's supposed to do and start like integrating the new knowledge with the stuff that you've learned before. And I think unfortunately, I sort of say to people, I go, this is not a protocols based course, which is what a lot of people are looking for. I don't think it's just the fitness industry that does this. I'm sure it occurs in a lot of industries. It's where you can go there for a weekend and the promise is almost like, come here, pay this, and you will know the exact protocol to give to every person. And I'm like, that's a point of departure. Okay, you have to learn what foundation should be built out, and what you should continue to learn from there, and are able to apply.
Well, it's the same when we teach these courses, and a lot of the personal trainers, they want cues or whatever, or how do we know this, and I'm like, what you have to start understanding is the anatomy, and then how that individual's limbs moving, and look at their limbs and visualize where the hell that's going, and then what movement they're doing, whether it's abduction, adduction, and then understand what muscles use that joint, and then take them and train them, because everyone's different. Everyone has something different going on. Someone's got a tight TFL, someone might have tight adductors, but you're not going to know unless you start assessing them and start looking at these things, and then start to figure, okay, their joints are moving, actually they're doing this at their foot, they're doing this at their knee, and you got to pay attention to all that stuff. And it's not can't just give you a cue and tell them what to do. You need to look at what that person's doing and then cue them about 10 different ways till they get it.
And I think it's exciting times like in our industry right now, because I've coached other coaches before that have come to me from a certain gym where the education wasn't big on the agenda there. So their environment with the coaches that they're surrounded by is that no one pays anything for education except to get your minimum points needed to maintain doing what you're doing. And they'll wonder why they're not successful financially. Okay, and I'll sort of look around at the coaches that are in my facility and I'll go, guess how much money he spent on his education last year? And it'd be like $15,000. Guess how much he spent? $6,000. Guess how much this guy's spending? $12,000. And they just blown away. They're like, "Are you serious?" And it's like, well, again, you can reach out to the best person in the world right now and do a one-on-one consult.
On Skype,
when I was going through uni, we were using floppy disks and going to the library, and we knew nothing. And I just look at how easily you can get expert information right now. You can it's just unbelievable. That's why I think it's exciting times that a lot of these young coaches that are going out there and just throwing themselves into this education, they got to remember to go and apply it. Okay, apply quickly. It's that speed of implementation that's very important. Otherwise, we get this paralysis to analysis, and it's like, I know so much, but you're kind of more of a theoretical trainer than a practical trainer. Okay, and so there's something to be said from being able to flow over the time, the larger time frame over the year throughout both of those. Learn the theory, get around people that are going to make you better, go and apply it with your clientele. And I think if you're not surrounded by a culture of clientele or other coaches that appreciate that, then you're better off in another environment. If you want to be good.
Cool. And so with this with your course, how many, it's like a small intake, you only take so many people so often, and if anyone wants to sign up?
It's kind of not public just yet. So I did a tour I think at the end of 2017, and I just wanted basically 30 people.
Is mum home?
30 people initially to come into the course, and I think we actually got about 35. Sorry.
That's all right.
And basically I wrote it over the last 18 months. Okay, so they're
Yeah.
just finishing up the course now, and then I'll advertise for more people to come into the course.
Yeah.
And it's completely online and done at one's own pace.
Yeah.
And I'll be doing some mentoring as an addition if people want it, and hopefully bring in on some of the other coaches and trainers
Cool.
to help me out with that.
Cool. All right. And then if anyone wants to get in contact you for coaching or anything like that, you're taking on clients currently?
Yeah.
No.
Yes, yes and no. No, look, I mean, I've been told like I'm very hard to get in with, just because it's just, as you know, I'm in the trenches just working all the time. So once you're
And here is your wife. Hi.
she is. You can get a hold of me through my socials and stuff like that, and I won't give out my email address here or anything, but like I have a new website launching soon with the Attain publicly on it. At the moment it's just sort of behind the scenes on a learning management system, I love the coaching, so I don't really want to drop that off. I love the personal training. It's only a small part of my business now, but when I consider dropping it out and just sitting behind a desk or behind a camera or whatever, I'm like, I can't do it.
Human interaction is important.
It's so important, and I've come to realise that, and I've talked to other coaches that have gone 100% online, and some of the guys that I really respect have given me feedback that they just genuinely miss it. And I think it's been enough for me to maintain some element of that, no matter where I go with everything else. So
Cool.
So if you're not following Benny on social media, you should be.
Benny Lives. Learn about what
Benny
cans of
Lives.
sardines to buy.
On Instagram. He puts out a lot of good content, and thank you for coming on the podcast today,
thanks for having me,
It was
guys.
awesome.
Yeah,
Amazing.
thanks a lot for coming on, and thanks for having us at your house.
you're
It was
welcome.
lovely.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.